Hey guys, this is Josh Grayson here, putting another video up about the Starlink beta testing and feedback that I'm trying to give for people. Um, Gotten way more comments than I figured I'd get. All sorts of people from all over the planet, which is pretty crazy. There's evidently quite a bit of demand for Starlink, which is awesome because I think the product's going to be rolling out relatively soon. There was some more questions that I wanted to take some time to actually post up and the answers to. I've had a lot of work that I had to do this week, a lot of school work and professional work that I had to get done, but I've actually had a little time in the last day and a half to collect a little more information so I could post that for you guys. So I'm going to do that here tonight, and then there's actually some more stuff that I'm going to get to in the future as well. So let me just run through kind of the agenda for today's video. That way you guys can get an idea what we're going to cover, and then maybe some of the videos that you should see coming in the future. Um, as I post more content and have more time to do some more testing. So today I wanted to walk through power usage. That is something that quite a few people have been asking about. How much of a power draw does the equipment have? There's also been some questions that I've seen in the comments, just um, some questions that maybe people that follow Starlink pretty heavily might already know the answers to, but they're covered in the frequently asked questions of the Starlink support portal, which I don't believe everybody has access to. But if you're a customer, there's a support section and they have a frequently asked questions section. There's a lot of answers in there. I'm not going to go through all of them, but there's two or three that I think are relevant that I've seen quite a few questions about in the comments that I did want to bring up and just show you guys what the answers to those are straight from Starlink. So we'll go over that stuff. And then there's a little bit that I wanted to show you guys on the internet about how to track where these satellites are at. So for the folks that are in different countries or in different parts of the United States, looking at where the satellites are currently in their journey towards blanketing the entire internet, or sorry, blanketing the entire globe in internet, is going to be kind of an interesting thing to keep track of. So you can actually pull up these websites, see where the satellites are in their orbit, because every time they launch, they kind of get in this serialized train, and then they slowly spread out into their destined orbits. And then once they're in that position, in theory, there's going to be almost a grid of satellites that are kind of crossing, and it'll be really cool to kind of see that evolve over time. And these websites have a way for you to track that, which is kind of interesting for people to see, I think. So I'll show you those websites so you guys can kind of keep track of that. And then last but not least, there was some news that came out of about when Starlink is anticipating that they can release beyond the beta. So when are the people in the rest of North America going to get services? When is the rest of the world going to get services? When is Canada going to get services? Because I know there's already been some talk about Canada getting some services. So I'll have some news articles that we could take a quick look at that if you guys haven't heard of or heard about yet, I'll go ahead and share that information with you as well, because that was a question I got a lot in the comments. I didn't necessarily have an answer until I saw these articles today. Um, so beyond that, the only other thing there, I was going to do a quick trace route. A lot of people were asking about a trace route, so I can do that really quick as well. The results of that are kind of interesting. Hopefully you guys have some ideas on what's going on with that. And then after I do all that, that'll be the end of this video pretty much. But I do plan on doing some future videos once I have more time to do a little more research and dig into some of these other questions, because there's so many questions that um, I didn't already have the answers ready for, or I have to do a little digging. Um, One of those is to do some testing in inclement weather. So how's it going to do in the snow when it's overcast, cloudy, snowy? Obviously, I have to wait for the weather to come around. So I'll be doing those tests as those opportunities arise. People want to see the antenna, not the antenna, but the satellite dish operate on its motor. So when you first set it up, it kind of comes set up like this, and it actually tilts itself in the right orientation. And I'm going to try to get a video of the startup process and then potentially do like a time lapse, because I'm not sure if it actually adjusts itself all throughout the day. I think it does, but I'm not 100% sure. So I'm going to go ahead and do uh, some videos of that and see if I can catch it in the act and see what exactly it's doing. Um, and then the other thing people are wondering about is static IPs. Does the service come with a static IP? I'm not sure yet. I'm gonna have to do some digging on that. I'll get back to you guys on that as well. And then A lot of people are asking about gaming and the latency that you see with gaming. I've been downloading some PC games. I don't do a lot of gaming in the more recent past. I used to back in the day. So I'll do some first-person shooter gaming, show you guys what the latency looks like, probably Fortnite and Counter-Strike. So yeah, I'll dig into that in future videos. But for now, let's just cover the topics for today. And the first one was the power. So I wanted to show you guys some photos of what the power brick look like. I already showed these the other day, but I think it's good to just look at the power specs on this stuff before I show you kind of the breakdown of what we saw on the power meter. So this is the back of the PoE injector. This is the thing that powers the whole system, for those that aren't aware. And so both the satellite and the Starlink router, if you're using the Starlink router, plug into this device. And you can see it has a total max output of 180 watts. It's got two PoE ports on here. You can see that listed here. It's 56 volts at 1.6 amps times 2. And there's actually a picture of those two ports. Black one goes to the satellite dish, white one goes to the router. Okay. And then you can see the output on the router. It's kind of what you'd expect. It's 56 volts, go figure, at 0.18 amps. So a little less than the output of uh, what you see here. It's about half actually of the 1.6 amps you can see, and that's pretty typical. You don't normally see them trying to max that out. So this is the power meter program that I have, and it works with a little box that goes inside of your breaker panel. It's called the Sense Power Monitor. I'm going to show you the website really quick. So if you guys are interested in getting one, it's part of like, if you're into kind of the smart home technology, this is a really cool gadget to have. And you can see it just goes in your breaker box here. And it has a little Wi-Fi adapter that you actually sticks out the antenna. And there's these little clamps that clamp onto the main power in your breaker box. And they just literally clamp on around the main service wires, and they read how much power you're consuming in your house at any given point. And so it's a pretty interesting, little cool gadget. And the dashboard that it puts together after doing some readings in your on your service over time, it kind of looks like this. It's a chart. So you can see here. Here's a week of power usage, and I actually have solar. So the yellow is solar, and the red is power consumption. And so if I look at the last hour or so, you can see here at around 12:20. It's pretty late at night, but um, around 12:20, I went ahead and pulled the power on this thing, the PoE injector. And so you could see it was hovering around 1,550 watts, I would say. And then when I pulled the power, it started to dip down to around 1410 on average. So we'll say 15, maybe 1560 to 1410. So it's about 150 watts is what I would say. And so for those that are wondering how much power it draws, based on what I'm seeing here on Sense, I think it's about 150 watts. And that's with the router plugged in and the satellite dish plugged in. So, and you can see after I plugged it back in, there's actually a little spike in power. This is probably the boot process. Normally there's a little more power consumption when you're doing a fresh boot. So after that boot, it's kind of leveled back off. So that's that piece. Um, the other thing I wanted to cover is the support page. There was some questions that came up in the comments that I feel like are addressed pretty well by Starlink, and I just wanted to bring those up really quickly. So one was, can you cancel the service, or is there a term associated with the service? The answer is no, at least not in the beta program. There is no term or contract associated with it. It's just a month to month, and you can cancel at any time. There's a cancel button in the portal for you to do that. So that was something I know some people were wondering about. Um, Going down here a little further, people were wondering, can you actually plug in your own router right here? And the answer is yes. A lot of people in the comments were replying to other commenters on this topic. Evidently, they already had some of this information, but yeah, it appears that you can. You can plug in your own personal router, not the Starlink router, either into the white port on the PoE injector, or you can plug in your router to the aux port on the Starlink router. So you could do either. And it looks like you can go ahead and use like your own mesh networking, whatever you have. And so that's kind of cool. It could be a switch, it could be whatever. Um, if you're plugging it into the router, that is. Um, so yeah, pretty cool to see that that's going to work out. And so I know a lot of people, they have pretty fancy setups. They don't necessarily want to use the Starlink router. So I think that everybody kind of figured that was the case, but it's just good to see that that's where they're headed with it. The other thing I did find out is that they are working on a web portal for the router. So if you did want to use the Starlink router, there will be an admin portal that they're adding here relatively soon. So just know that that's coming. Um, the other thing that people were asking about that they covered in here was you move and play with Starlink on the go. So it sounds like right now the answer is no. So at this time, Starlink must be used at the service address on your account. If you're moving, please contact support using the button on this page for assistance. So it sounds like they have it geofenced, and there were some people in the comments that were already responding to other people asking this question. I just wasn't sure. I hadn't seen anything on it, and so they did address it right here. So yeah, you can't, in theory, go and plug it in at somebody else's house or go to a different state and try to use it there. Not that it would work super great, given there's not a lot of coverage in those areas probably yet from the satellites, but um, yeah, that's something that's probably coming in the near future. I know they're talking about you can use it on RVs, you can use it on boats, you can use it wherever, but until they end up releasing the geo fencing or whatever it is they have in place, it's probably not going to work so well. I might test it anyway, but just to answer the question straight out of Starlink, from Starlink, that's what they're saying, is that they don't intend for that to work at this point. And whether they're actually putting restrictions in place to keep that from happening, I'm not sure, but and it probably won't work very well. That's going to be my guess, but probably worth playing around with anyway. So um, the other thing I wanted to share with you guys is the tracking of these satellites. So there's two sites here that are pretty cool. So one is called Leo Labs. So for those of you who haven't seen Leo Labs is literally a 3D globe here of Earth, and you can see it's showing all of the space junk that surrounds the Earth. And these are not to scale. The space junk isn't. This is bigger than it really is, but it shows like old pieces of rockets, satellites, and everything. But what's really cool is to see the Starlink satellites. You can even see the space station here, which is pretty cool. Um, but you can filter this stuff. So what I did is I went up here and I went to search and I go to Starlink. Just type in Starlink, and now it's filtered on showing just the Starlink satellites. And you can see this is like the last 24 hours, at least that's my understanding. You can see the time it's showing here in UTC. And you can see the trains of satellites. So when they first launched these satellites, they're actually in a train formation. And if you hover on them, it'll show you what the name of the satellite is. And you can actually click on it and get a little more detail about that satellite. Um, But these satellites over time spread out in their orbit and they start to cover more space. And so you can see these other satellites that have been launched for quite a bit more time, they've had a chance to position themselves around the globe. And you can see they're actually going across the globe in in perpendicular orbiting patterns. So they're kind of doing a hatch-like pattern across the globe. And so that's how we're going to get no dropping of the internet, even though the satellites are moving. Is there's always going to be at least a couple satellites within range of your dish once they get fully deployed. So that's the plan, and I think it's going to be cool to kind of track this as it goes. So yeah, check out this site, take a look at it. The other one that's very similar to this is called SatFlare, and this one is kind of a stiller version of it. You can see here what the current satellite coverage is by Starlink, and once again, you can kind of see the trains of satellites here on this globe. There's the white lines, so it's pretty interesting. Check it out, and just something to follow as things progress along, especially if you're really anxious about this and you think you're definitely going to get the service. If you want to kind of track to see, okay, how close are they getting to covering me? And you can see, like right now in my area, I'm right here. You can see there's quite a few satellites, at least in this image, and you can update this one just by hitting O on your keyboard. I think is what it is. And yeah, when you go to this site, by the way, in order to get to Starlink, you have to click all the Starlink satellites. You go to Starlink all. Otherwise, it'll just show you like specific trains of satellites, which are specific launches that have occurred in the past. So um, But yeah, and then I think if you hit O, it's actually updating. It doesn't show a lot of movement, but pretty interesting website. This one's not nearly as fancy as the Leo website, but let's see what it says here. Yeah. Oh, the 0 key, not the O key. So you hit 0 to update, to refresh the page. And you can see here as I hit 0, it's updating the data in real time. They're saying if they if they didn't do the 0 key thing, then it would just be way too much data for your browser to handle and it would crash, which is probably true. So glad they put that feature in. So now that we've gone through that, if you guys have any questions about that or you have some other cool tools you want to share, please write those in the comments because this kind of stuff is really interesting to me. Um, I wanted to go through a traceroute really quick. So a lot of people, a couple people, I wouldn't say a lot, but a couple people that might be on the more technical side asking about traceroute. So I'll do a traceroute to google.com. And you can see it makes it on the first hop here to open wrt.lan. But after that, it just kind of, it'll sit here and do this. It'll just time out. It doesn't matter if I do Google or ESPN or any other website. It seems to time out. So I think there's some sort of blocking going on. So for those that are curious about what's going on here or have some information on what could be going on, please share that in the comments because I'm not exactly sure what the deal is. I'm assuming it's we're getting stopped for some reason, but not sure what that reason is or um, even if it's specific to Starlink. So any feedback you guys have on that, please share. Um, so go ahead and close this. But yeah, ESPN will do the same thing. So now on to the news. So the latest that I've seen on when is Starlink going to be available in your area? So this is a big question. This is probably the biggest question I got in the comments over the last 4 or 5 days, which is, I live in a different country, or I live in Canada, or I live in a different part of the United States. I don't live in the northern half of the United States. When am I going to be able to get it? And I didn't really have a good answer, but it turns out there's articles that were just literally written yesterday and today that kind of cover this topic. So one of them was from inverse.com. And on this article, they talk about Canada. So Starlink hopes to offer full service to the northern United States and Canada by the end of 2020. So northern United States, which is pretty good. I mean, they're already covering part of the northern United States, so I'm guessing like maybe the northern half in Canada. And it sounds like the only thing that's holding them up in Canada is they are waiting on approvals. So this article, if you read through it, talks about they think they're ready to do some testing, especially in southern Canada, but they are waiting for approvals from the Canadian government. So that's something that they're working on. And the other interesting part of this article, in this paragraph specifically, is they are planning to expand near global coverage by 2021. So that's pretty quick. And that's kind of what I was thinking. Within the next year or two, you're going to start to see a good portion of the globe covered. So that's good news for folks that are international that are really waiting for this stuff. I don't think it's going to be as long as some people are thinking. There were some people that seemed pretty pessimistic about it. Like, I know it got started in the United States, but you got to realize like Redmond is where a lot of the employees at SpaceX work, and I'm in Washington, which is Redmond's a city just maybe 2, 3 hours from where I live. And so I think a lot of the reason for why they're testing in the areas they're testing has to do with the geography of the employees and kind of how things are working as far as launching the satellites. I think there's a lot of logistics involved, but it just makes sense to do the testing close to where the employees that are working on it, the engineers that are working on it. So um, thought it was worth pointing out. The other article that was interesting um, about Canada was this one. And actually, I think this is the article that dives into the regulation part. Sorry, I got it mixed up with this one. This one talks about when Canada will have it, which is, within the next 2 months. The end of 2020 is, within the next 2 months because we're at the beginning of November. But this one talks about they're waiting on approvals. So the regulatory approval will allow them to begin their Starlink constellation to provide high-speed internet connectivity to the rural remote communities of Canada. So we're just waiting on Canada to get this approval through is basically what Elon's saying. Um, and uh, Canada, is basically saying, yeah, we recognize that we need it. And so it's basically going to happen. It just hasn't happened yet. So in a nutshell, if you're in Canada, Southern Canada specifically, and you're waiting for this, hopefully it comes soon. And maybe talk and work with your regulators to try to get this stuff to happen a little faster. Do whatever you can. I'm not sure what the politics in Canada are like, but that kind of seems to be where it's at. So um, hope you guys enjoyed me answering all these questions and providing some context to what's going on with Starlink. Yeah, please like, please subscribe, please share as much as you can with people that are in the same situation that I'm in, and I'm assuming most of you are in, where maybe you have a lackluster internet service and you're looking to get better internet service. Um, let's try to spread the word about the service and how good it is and where the gaps are and whether it's going to be a good solution for certain people. Yeah, I appreciate all you guys watching, and yeah, please check me out on my next video. I'll try to post something here in the next couple days. Thanks.